Well, hello there, and welcome to day 105 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And today in my loose horror theme of the week, as I said, the theme starts to really come apart at this point, but I finally get to complete my Rodney Ascher documentary trilogy by watching his 2015 film Nightmare, or The Nightmare. So as you can see, broad daylight. I choose a horror theme, and then necessity means that I have to film one of these videos in the brightest of bright sun, but such is the way. And as I say, loose theming, because as I say, this documentary is horror insofar as it uses horror mechanics to explore a real world physiological, psychological condition that people suffer, which is sleep paralysis. And it's unfortunate, I suppose, watching the Rodney Ascher documentaries, the three of them, the way that I have, because of course I went in watching 237, which was his 2012 film, and I love Room 237. I think it's a really interesting documentary. And Glitch in the Matrix, of course, coming from this year, again, a really, really interesting documentary that's presented in a very strange visual way. And then you have The Nightmare, which, again, interesting subject matter, but of the three, it's probably the one that it's weakest by the fact that the other two are just better. It's not a bad documentary, it is just like I said, Room 237 really knocked it out of the park. It was a fascinating documentary to me. And just between this and Glitch in the Matrix, I just think Glitch in the Matrix was exploring ideas and using visuals in a really experimental way. So the way this documentary is structured is that it's a series of interviews with people who have suffered sleep paralysis and the kinds of nightmares and visions that they have in that state. And then that's interspersed with recreative footage to sort of demonstrate the experiences that they go through. And it is a fascinating area, the idea of people, waking essentially and being in this frozen state of awareness, and yet their dreams are sort of pushing into their conscious reality to the point where they can't tell the difference between when they're in the dream and when they're not. Insofar as that, you have these things like the shadow man, who is a prominent, consistent feature within their dreams. In these people from across the world, primarily UK, US, but still, again, these people who come forward and say, oh yes, I've had this dream about, I've been in this state, I've suffered from this condition. I mean, the reason that Ascher wanted to do the documentary is he himself suffered from the condition. And again, there's something quite haunting about the style of it. I mean, it's something that generally should be a terrifying idea. And of course, as the documentary states and as common knowledge, it's been used endlessly within horror storytelling. Of course, things like A Nightmare on Elm Street, the first Insidious film sort of touches on the idea. Even films like Jacob's Ladder, all explore the idea of people being in this various states of conscious or unconsciousness, and what they experience and the sort of fear that it generates within them. I mean, what the film does quite well is it does do that principle of escalation, where initially people are just talking about their experiences, and you're just seeing people, either having dreams or being awake to some degree, but seeing something within their waking mind, but being paralyzed. and then it escalates to sort of the fear that happens for them, and the fact that some of them, initially might only have the dream once, but then others have it several times regularly. In some cases, people have it every night that they go to sleep, and what that does to your mind. And then it gets to the point where it's about the physical effects of the dream, and the fact that they are actually feeling pain or fear, or people talk about things like a creature sitting on their chest, looking at them and speaking to them, and it's a real demonstration of the power of the mind, and it is that case where, of course, historically, if we re-examine our attitudes to mythology, to accounts of demons and spirits and all these sorts of things, they really harken back to the power of the human experience and how we interpret things that we don't know how to process. Of course, this feeds into psychosis and the effect of psychosis, which tends to be auditory. But this is the cousin of that, I suppose, where this is a visual and auditory hallucination that people are having that's so visceral to them, because again, it's pushing their dreamscape into their reality. And I do find that really interesting. Unfortunately, like I say, the documentary is fairly standard. I mean, like I said, it's talking heads, and then it's using recreations of people's accounts. And the recreations are good, and again, having the opportunity to see what or have these visions recreated is interesting. But that in mind, it's very conventional. It's where you have on either side of this, Room 237 and Glitch in the Matrix, that really do push the style and the cinematography of the documentary, and uses visuals to explore the ideas. This is like I say, the weakest, because it's just interviews with recreations, and in terms of the documentary format, it meant there were points in which it was a little bit dull. It was a little bit, you felt like you were being told, there's probably over a half dozen people being interviewed, and frankly you're being told a lot of the same information again and again and again, and it gets layered and unpacked, but again it becomes a little repetitive. And it is interesting. It is interesting in the way that different people process it, the way that different people, how they interact with their life. It entangles itself in their lives. All of whom have gone to a doctor or a psychologist and have been told it's stress related, or they're being told, there's not much we can do about it. The studies just aren't there. You have your more scientific-minded people who are just struggling with it, but they don't really know what to do, and they try to rationalise it, but again, it still consistently happens. And then you have your more religious-minded people who, of course, tend more towards, wanting to understand and process and deal with it from a religious angle, maybe, from the thing of, well, maybe it is a demon of some kind. Now, frankly, that's not really, in a rational context. I mean, it's not really a conclusive way to approach this, but that is at least one lady's perspective on it. And again, the fact that it's a still fairly tapped part of psychology and unexplored, and the fact that these people spent years not knowing if they were alone in this, and yet clearly once they started researching it, and started to see in film and television and other people's accounts, they started to see consistencies and come together. Shows that there is a consistency in this that deserves exploration. But again, it's just one of those areas of science and psychology that just hasn't been tapped into deeply enough. So, like I say, an interesting subject matter. with a documentary that's probably not as interesting as I wish it had been, but still, I'm glad I'm done. Rodney Ascher's trilogy completed. I love his style. I love the subject matters that he looks into, and he is definitely a documentarian who I'm going to continue to follow, as he releases stuff. I know he has made other content. There is a fourth documentary that's not particularly well known, that's not as acknowledged as these other three, but and some fiction work that he's done. But in terms of his primary trilogy, I'm pleased that I've watched them, and yes, he is a great filmmaker. Anyway, if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that little bell to get notifications when new uploads come up. There's now well over 100 videos, so please look through and see if there's anything that you might like. And if you follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, I'm always tweeting movie-related content or television-related content and trailers. They've just released the F9 trailer, so I've shared that on my Twitter. But yeah, and of course I always post new videos on my Twitter as well. Thank you for joining me. Take care.